Hello, Book 2. Today's video is going to be a bit of an experiment, and I don't know how it will go. We are doing my library tour of this little book room. We're finishing up my library tour just in general here at Hyde Cottage. There are only a few hundred books that we haven't looked at, plus the Penguin Wall, which I obviously am not going to do in 2019. That's going to wait. And we've got to the point now where everything that remains is romance novels. Mass market romance novels, and the vast majority of those, 90% of them, are these old Signet Regency romances from the late 70s and 80s. And that presented me with a problem because I don't think many of you are interested in these things. And also because there are hundreds of them. I couldn't, if I talked about them in anything like the detail that I've talked about most of the other books in this library tour, it would take all of 2020 to do. So I have been thinking about it. I'm not quite sure how I want to do this. I think what I will just do is show you these things and tell you a little bit about their plot, just so you can see what's on the shelf. And the idea, quite a few of you have emailed me about this and said, go ahead and do it. If we're not interested, we'll just skip your video. I take that as a great compliment that dozens and dozens and dozens of you, probably hundreds of you, except you don't email me, you lurk instead. Probably hundreds of you realize that I'm not going to be wounded if you skip a video of mine, or many videos of mine. Not at all. I make a lot of videos. I do this because I love it. So I guess we'll give that a try and see. And I'll look at the finished copy, and if it seems just unbearably tedious to me, I won't keep doing it. If those of you are really curious to know which Regency romances I have, I could send you pictures. Right. I mean, we're in email contact with each other. So we're going to go through here, and I thought I'd lay the ground first with what we're talking about for those of you who might be willing to stick it in for the long haul. These are old-style Regency romances. This is a Signet Regency, but there are also Avon and Zebra and whatnot. And they are set during the Regency period of England, when King George III was incapacitated and could not rule, could not hold his throne. But he wasn't dead, and his son, the Prince Regent, took over the throne. He enacted a regency, and he suddenly became the Prince Regent of the country. He was the heir apparent, but he started ruling in place of the monarch. Usually in English monarchical history, you would see regencies if the monarch was too young. For instance, his mother would be Princess Regent for him, or somebody else would be. And this was before the Prince Regent became George IV, and it was seen by some people during the Regency itself, and it has been seen ever since by romancers, people with a romantic view of the past, as a time of license, of extra elegance, of a kind of free-for-all, where no adults were in the room. The Prince Regent was very much an adult during this time, but he was notoriously irresponsible and loved the finer things in life, 10-course meals, beautiful houses, beautiful women. So it's been easy to characterize the Regency period as a time, a little idyllic interlude that would be a perfect setting for romances. That was part of what caused people to gravitate to this time period. And the other thing that caused them to gravitate was Jane Austen, was Pride and Prejudice. Almost every one of these old-style Regency romances is explicitly or otherwise patterned on Pride and Prejudice. And the outlines of that pattern are fairly simple. You have one or both of the protagonists, the lovers, are wealthy. One or both of them are either members of the landed gentry or connected to the landed gentry. Very seldom in these books, in these old-style Regency romances, does ordinary everyday poverty enter the picture. One or the other can be ruined, catastrophically, dramatically ruined, and need to repair their finances, but both will be of the ton, of the upper crust of society, usually. And the general pattern of the story is that either the young woman will desperately need the man, and he will seem indifferent or negligent or scornful, or the young man will desperately need the woman, and she will seem indifferent or negligent or scornful. And the climax of these books is always a scene in which they realize that they desperately need each other, that they are in fact in love with each other, and that they are going to marry each other. The marriages we never see. They take place after the book's over. So these books, the whole lot of them here, are the story of true love is Rocky Road, the rocky road of true love, where there will be minor betrayals or major betrayals. There'll be minor or major misunderstandings. Often in these books, the two main characters, the ones who are destined to fall in love and marry, will have an unmistakable spark right from the beginning. Sometimes not. Sometimes that spark will be hidden all the way to the end. It's up to the author to vary that very corseted formula in any way that they like. And one of the reasons why I love these old Regency romances is all the different variations, tiny variations, but often the product of a lot of thought and a lot of work. These are not easy to do, as anyone who's ever written a Petrarchan sonnet will know. The stricter the template, the harder it is to do a good job, not the easier it is. It's not like the template does the work for you. And the main difference between this, for instance, and a modern Regency romance, you can see one right off the bat, is that modern Regency romances not only look, but very much are, far more sexually suggestive. In a modern Regency romance, you will never have both people fully clothed. Almost never. And they will always have these, okay, here they are fully clothed, but you can't miss. That would never happen. This is about as close as you get to that. These modern Regency romances are far more, they're anachronistically seductive, anachronistically suggestive. So that's an element in them, and it's different from these. I'm not going to say that it's necessarily worse. It allows the writer to be a lot more playful. Modern Regency romances are a lot more funny than even the funniest of these older ones. They're a lot more playful, a lot more ingenious, a lot more outrageous. You just have to let your historical sense go by the board. Whereas these older Regency romances, there's nothing like that. There may be a ruthless seduction, or a passionate stolen kiss in a gazebo at night, or something like that. But it's not just simple carnality. And as a result, these tend to be more straight-laced and more historically accurate. The writers who did a lot of these, there were some writers in the 70s and 80s that made a career out of these things, just wrote one every month. They did a lot of research into the Regency period. You get a lot of the slang, a lot of the mind frames, a lot of the individual events that are going on, whether it's the earthquake in Lisbon or the latest developments from the front with Napoleon. You get a lot of that from these authors, whereas you never get any of it from modern authors, from modern Regency romance authors. They just don't bother. Or the ones who do are so rare that they stand out, whereas that was the norm with these things. And I love them. Once I was convinced to read romances at all by a romance reader and writer, I roamed all around the genre, the Scottish Highlanders, the cowboys, at the time Vikings and American Indians, and eventually fell on these slim Regency romances and fell in love with them. I absolutely love them for a couple of reasons. I am not a big fan of sex on the page. I have actually never, in any genre, in all of the reading that I have ever done in my life, seen it done well. I don't think it has any place in fiction. Fiction is about characters. Character checks at the door with such things. So there's no way to... That's not only that, it's also that the fact that these are so tightly corseted, the fact that isn't going to happen and nothing like that's going to happen, the fact there's usually not a lot of violence, usually not explicit politics, the fact that these things are so tightly controlled forces the writers to be more inventive. And I think it shows in a lot of these books. I fell in love with this subgenre, kind of ironically, because it went away. Nobody writes these anymore. The Regency romances that are written now are these new ones, these gaudy ones that I like. I read plenty of them and I like them, but nobody makes these anymore. And these used to come out every month. And thanks to the generosity of charity bookshops and library sales and a lot of you, I have an enormous collection of these things, and I read them all the time. I pop them down whenever I need a break between books, or whenever I need something to read when I'm out of the house. I pop one of these things down. But so it's not that the Regency romance part that is the experimentation in this video. It's how to do this. How do we do this? There's hundreds of these things, and I don't want to make tedious videos, so I'm going to give it a couple of tries, and if it seems to me that it's just utterly dull, then I can just stop, and those of you who are really interested in seeing what Regency romances I have, I can send you pictures. We're all in email contact with each other anyway, so let's just go through a few of these and see what we have. and I obviously won't talk about them, in a substantial way. I'll just show you them and read you a little of the plot. So this first one is Saving Lord Verwood by Elena Green. And you can tell right away a major sea change that happened to these things. This is a painted photograph with a backdrop. But those are two people in the studio. Whereas this is drawn. This is drawn and painted right from the beginning. There's no models involved there. It's a drastically different thing. I don't know if you'll be able to tell, but you'll be able to tell over time, especially if you pay attention to the minutiae of these things the way I do. But this is, let's see here. Lord Verwood is an unapologetic connoisseur of the fair sex. With his smoldering good looks and disreputable past, he is the talk of the Brighton summer season, but not from Miss Penelope Talcott. The demure and virtuous young woman wishes only for a devoted husband, a country parsonage, and a family to care for. And you notice a difference there. That the elements there, the country miss who's pure, the rake from the outside world, who will learn quieter ways. Those are very normal. The variation that you notice on the back there is no London. London might appear in it, but that's an interesting variation. Then we have the impoverished Viscount. Here we are shifting over to photographic covers. That is obviously a fancy dress ball. What do we got here? Young and inexperienced Lady Melissa Stapleton was adrift in a world of deception and desire. Lord Heflin, the most rapacious rake in England, had her brother in his debt, and Melissa at his mercy. She had to flee his odious advances, only to find herself in greater danger. Oh, hi, Bean. You want to come in here? Just to throw her whole weight against the door to get my attention. And even her whole weight, she weighs 10 pounds. So even when she throws her whole weight against the door, it doesn't do any good. It's a very great difference from my Basset Hound, Lucy, who would just batter doors open with her head. Her head was mostly bone. So she would just ram the door open and nothing could stand against her. Even a locked door would just shiver in its frame. So we stopped locking doors around here because she would just ram it with her head. Lucy can't do that. Lucy's entire body weighs less than Lucy's head did. Or Frida's entire body weighs less than Lucy's head did. Okay, here's another Signet Regency romance. This is Edith Layton's Lady of Spirit. Yeah, we're back to drawings on the cover there. Miss Victoria Dawkins was in the most perilous position. Cast out of respectable society by a scurrilous slur on her good name, alone and penniless in London's lower depths, this proud but all too vulnerable young lady could not afford to turn down the Earl of Clune's offer. The elegant, handsome, and cleverly conscienceless nobleman wished to engage Victoria as a companion to an elderly woman on his great country estate. So she has a job, but she's going to fall in love with him, and more importantly, he's going to fall in love with her and stop being a rake. And the interesting thing about this is that it's longer by a third than most. Most of these Regency romances are corseted not only in their expectations and characters and plot, but also in their length. Getting a long one is the long ones were very rare. This is you can't really tell, but this is about a third longer, and that's interesting to me. Then we have Edith Layton again. This is False Angel, and this is archery at a country estate. Let's see here. Lord Jocelyn Kidd, Marquis of Severn, was the handsomest and most charming nobleman in London, and the most notorious. Not only had he been divorced under shocking circumstances from a young and innocent bride, but since that disastrous event he had shown no scruples and met no refusal in conquering beauty after beauty. The lovely Lady Leonora Talwyn had heard all the stories about him and understood them only too well, having seen from her womanizing father's example how base and brutish men could be. Never, she vowed, would she fall victim to a rake like the scandalous Severn. But it will happen. They will warm to each other, and she will probably learn in the course of the book that most of his reputation is scandal but not substance. Either that, or he will just decide to make a new life. This is Edith Layton again. I've tried to lump a lot of these author by author, because I found that's the easiest way. If you lay them out on a bed, is the easiest way to see what my duplicates are, is to put just stacks of authors together. That's why a lot of the authors are together. This is The Duke's Wager. You can see with some of these things, you see an interested onlooker looking on like this. You can see the plot already in some of its elements. let's see here. Lovely Regina Berryman was pursued by two men, the two most attractive and infamous bachelors in London. One was Jason Thomas, Duke of Torquay, whose skill and success in seduction had made him a legend of lordly licentiousness. The other was St. John Basil St. Charles, Marquis of Bessacar, the devilish duke's only rival as the foremost rake of the realm. You can tell just by the names who's going to win in that particular one. I don't know. How is this going? Let's 15 minutes. We got so few done because I gave you an overview of what Regency romances are. Maybe I didn't need to do that. But I don't want to push this for experiment's sake. So let me know. I mean, you email me. My email's right down below, or leave a comment. Let me know if this is of any interest at all. If it is, then we can keep doing it. But if it's not, we should nip it in the bud fairly early because there's a huge number of these to go. So I'm going to wrap this up for now. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.